Welcome everybody to today's mobile expert interview. Thank you for joining us for the latest in this series. I'm Bridget Romains, founder of Mobile Relocation. We run resettlement programs for some leading New Zealand and international businesses who bring international talent into New Zealand and want to get their people up and running quickly and efficiently so they can start focusing on work. Our interview series looks into the more tricky and technical aspects of relocation. There's a range of other interviews which you can find on our website, www.mobile-relocation.com. Our subject today is immigration, specifically New Zealand's new work visa program, which is starting to come into effect in just a few weeks. So I'd like to welcome Caren Donald to join us. Caren leads KPMG's visa team. She's highly experienced with both the previous immigration system and this massive change which is about to be implemented. She's going to walk us through what employers need to know about the new Accredited Employer Work Visa program, AEWV. AEWV. Thank you, Caren, because it is a bit of a mouthful. So I'm going to start off, Caren, by asking you, what are the most significant differences between the pre-COVID Accredited Employer Program and the new AEWV? Because most employers will have been familiar with the way things were 2 years ago. Probably a lot of people haven't been able to use the border exception process, so may not have actually recruited offshore during that period, and they're coming into a whole new system. So what are the most significant differences people need to be aware of?
Oh, well, thank you, Bridget, and thank you so much for having me here today. So yeah, there's a very big difference between the two policies. And I think the one very important thing that people don't possibly know is that the old talent or accredited employer work visa scheme has closed. So it's no longer available for their work visa, their current employees, and it's no longer available to any candidates that are going to come into New Zealand. So really important, that policy is closed. The other significant difference between the two is that the old policy was an optional policy that employers could apply for, and it was really aimed at the higher skilled migrants coming into New Zealand that would give them a pathway to residence. This new policy that's coming into play in July, unfortunately, is not optional. It is now a mandatory requirement that all New Zealand employers need to be accredited if they want to support a work visa for a migrant. So unfortunately, it's not an option anymore. The other really big significant difference between the two is that the old system was led by the migrant. So the migrant needed to have a job offer, basically, that met the requirements of the policy, and then they could apply for this work visa. This new system is not like that. This new system is going to be very different, and it's going to be led by the employer in New Zealand. So I'm going to explain a little later on what that means for an employer, but really important difference. And then I guess lastly, the difference between the two systems, I think, is that this new system, immigration are telling us they're not going to make it as onerous or as rigorous as the old accreditation system used to be. I'm not sure how many of your clients would have been accredited in the past, but it was quite a long, lengthy application, and you had to provide a lot of information. You had to provide evidence of your HR systems. You had to provide evidence of your health and safety policies in your office. You had to provide templates of how you do things. It was really a very onerous, long application. We are hearing that this new accreditation application is not going to be like that. It's going to be more of an undertaking. So I think what they mean by that is tick a box and confirm. And it's going to be, they're telling us that the renewal assessment, the assessment is going to be quicker, and it's going to be a much faster process. So the way that it works is that employers can apply for two different types of accreditation. So the first accreditation is a standard accreditation. If anyone is for people that want to apply for migrants, for 5 or less migrants, and the next one is called the high volume accreditation, and that is for employers that have 6 or more work visa holders. Now remember, that'll be for this policy only, so it's not, those numbers don't count like your student visa holders that you're employing or your specific purpose visa holders that you're employing. It is only the people that you're employing under this policy. And
Karen, can I
there's
just
going to be a cost difference.
Yeah, with a quick question there. I'd read somewhere that this policy overtakes 6 previous visa categories. So does that mean that the number of other options apart from this policy are very small?
Absolutely, Bridget. So, Bridget, this is now going to be the only policy with a job offer that you'll use to come to New Zealand. So all the other policies that you may have fallen in, which other policies you may have fallen into those requirements have now gone. So I won't list them all because there's a long list, but those 6 are closed except for essential skills. Essential skills is the old general work visa policy that is still in play and going to be ongoing until the 3rd of July. So at the moment, if anyone comes into New Zealand through the border exemption process, the only option that they have is to apply for a work visa under essential skills, which is the old policy, the old general policy. That will close on the 3rd of July, and then on the 4th of July, this new AEWV will take over. It also coincides with when the border opens. So really important to note that at the moment, no visas are getting processed, or very few visas are getting processed for people that are offshore. From the 4th of July, when this policy opens, all visas will get processed, so offshore and onshore clients.
So, you know, some employers, for example, may be getting skilled work visas at the moment, but they're going to have to get ready for when that disappears at the beginning of July. So that means getting accredited over the next few months rather than leaving it till the beginning of July and then suddenly realizing they can't get any more visas.
Yeah, so I mean, Bridget, immigration have absolutely made it clear that you don't have to become accredited on the 23rd of May. That's a date I'm going to point out later, but the 23rd of May is when the application for accreditation opens. You don't have to apply on that day or very soon after. You only need to apply prior to wanting to support a migrant. So there's no rush because there is going to be a very big backlog and there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of applications at immigration's door, I'm sure. But just to be clear, you don't have to become accredited. You only need to become accredited if you want to support a current migrant that works for you, or you want to bring skills from offshore into New Zealand.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on the current migrant who works for you category? If their visa expires, you know, on the 5th of July, you would need to be accredited to apply for a new visa for them? How does that work?
Absolutely, Bridget. So that was going to be something I wanted to talk about a little later on. But one of your questions that you asked me was, what can employers do now to prepare? And I think that is one of the most important things that they can do, is to actually look at their current work visa holders that they have on their books and to see when their visas expire, because they need to plan accordingly. If, for example, you have a work visa holder that has an essential skills work visa and this visa expires at some point later in the year, you need to become accredited, do a job check, and then put in a work visa application under this new policy for that person. So there's quite a lot to do before they can actually apply for the visa. And I think this is what you and I are trying to get across to employers, that this time around, it's not up to the employee or the visa holder to get their visa. At this new policy is actually going to turn everything on its head, and it's going to mean that the employers need to meet a lot of requirements before they can support somebody like that.
Is there anything else that employers need to do to prepare for the scheme that you'd like to highlight?
Bridget, yes. So obviously the very first thing that they can do is apply for the accreditation. So that opens on the 23rd of May. And they will need to be across the requirements for that accreditation. So as I've said, there are 2 types of accreditation that's going to be available to employers, the standard and the high volume. We're being told that the fees are going to be quite a lot more than they used to be, but the fee for standard accreditation is $740, and the fee for high volume accreditation is $1,220. Also good to note that if somebody applies for the standard and then suddenly needs the high volume later on, they can change to the high volume. So don't worry.
And that's a one-off charge
that's
for the employer to become accredited, and then obviously the visa fees for each individual.
Absolutely. There's still many fees to come after that, unfortunately. So one thing that immigration have said is that current accredited employers, if they still have more than 6 months left on their accreditation, they won't pay for the very first application. So that's nice to know.
They still have to do it.
They still have to do it, but they
your
won't pay.
accreditation doesn't roll through.
No, it doesn't.
No,
Definitely not. And the first accreditation will be issued for 12 months only. So that's really important to know. Now, just to talk about requirements, because what you're asking me is what can we do to prepare? So I'll run through the requirements, and then I guess from this, the employers will know what they can do to prepare for this accreditation. So the very first requirement is obviously to be able to undertake that the business is viable and it's a genuinely operating business. We understand that most employers won't need to provide any evidence in this regard. But if the company has not been operating for more than 12 months, more than likely they will have to provide evidence. So immigration has access to a lot of information, and they will only ask for more information if they have any concerns or doubts or haven't got access to information. So that's really important. Obviously, the next thing is they need to comply with immigration, employment, and business standards. So I think this is looking at the key personnel within the organization and wanting to make sure that everybody in the past has complied with employment and immigration law. So for example, if somebody within the business or a key person within the business was asked to stand down in terms of supporting and hiring a migrant, that may affect their accreditation application. So really important to note that. Then, of course, they need to provide, this is brand new, and I think this is, Bridget, where your organisation will be supporting the migrants, is to provide settlement activities. So people are going to say, well, what do we need to do here? And I guess this is where you're going to step in, Bridget, and support them. But what we're hearing, it's about providing the migrant with the information that they need. And it will be very basic stuff like how to apply for an IRD number, how to find accommodation in New Zealand, the cost of living in New Zealand, how to access healthcare, and, do I have access to healthcare on my visa? And, simple things like that. And this is something that employers can address now and can start putting into place right now, because immigration will want to see that you have addressed that and that you already have a pack that you can just send out to a prospective candidate and say, here's all the information you need. All this information is online already via various portals. Bridget, you'll know, but Immigration Now, Immigration New Zealand's website, the IRD website, all sorts of websites have a lot of information with regards to that. But what immigration want to know is that you are actually providing your migrant with that link or with that information.
Absolutely, yeah. And we see that as an information pack. It's, when you're coming to a new country, it's stuff that we as New Zealanders know, but when you're coming from overseas, finding that information, can be quite difficult and time consuming. So we just make it very simple and clear and provide an information pack for employers to send out to meet that requirement.
Absolutely. So Bridget, then the other thing that's really important, and these may come as a surprise, but the other requirements that is going to be part of the accreditation process is that the employer must pay for the recruitment costs. Now, recruitment costs will include things like the actual accreditation fee, advertising for the role, job check fees. We'll get to job check later. And anything else like any sort of compulsory trade testing or, belonging to various organizations. So there has been some misunderstanding in terms of immigration's webinars that they've provided to date. There has been a lot of discussion and questions asked by employers about bonding, and it's a very big hot topic at the moment. I understand in the last webinar, and I was in the webinar myself, one of the senior immigration managers suggested that bonding was not going to be allowed under this new accreditation process, but they've actually since clarified that with me, because I went straight back to them and said, oh, hang on, this doesn't sound right. And he said, yeah, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. If bonding is in a contract in a legal context, and so in other words, it's legal in terms of employment law, then bonding is allowed. So for example, some companies might bond somebody for up to 24 months for the visa costs that they incurred, or the flights or the shipping costs that they incurred, and will bond the employee so that they don't, if they leave within a certain period, they need to pay that money back. So this is a bit of a grey area, but from what I understand is as long as it's legal in employment law, it'll be allowed. So not part of these recruitment costs that I'm talking about.
Right, thank you for clarifying that, because we see that very commonly with our clients, and it seems to be acceptable from certainly from the candidate point of view. Just one point of clarification there. Those costs that the employer must meet, does that include professional registration if that's a requirement of the job? Professional registration?
I believe so, yes, Bridget, I believe so, absolutely.
So for medical professionals or,
yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Bridget, then the one last thing it might take employers by surprise is that there is going to be an online learning module provided by immigration, and they are going to expect that employers and employees do these online modules. Now, we haven't seen what they are. We don't know what they look like yet, but it's really important to note that as part of the accreditation process, key personnel that are involved with the hiring of migrants are going to have to do these online learning modules and keep the records that they've done them. So I heard people asking about, so who's included? What I'm understanding is that it'll be your talent acquisition staff, it'll be your HR staff, not people that are just sitting in an interview, but they will need to do this online learning module, and it needs to be done within the period of your accreditation. So it doesn't need to be done beforehand, it needs to be done after you've become accredited, and I understand within the 12-month period. So really important. The other thing is that the employee that you are hiring also needs to do an online module for the employee, and the employer is obliged to give them time to do that.
So there's quite a lot more administration involved for an employer around the employment of an international candidate than there was under the previous policies.
Yeah, absolutely. Bridget, I think what I also have not explained, and I just want to be clear with regards to our interview today, what I'm talking about here is the accreditation, which is only step one in this new policy. There are two further steps. The two further steps are to do a job check, and the job check will be done by the employer and needs to be done before they can employ the migrant. And then, of course, the third step is for the migrant to apply for the visa. So there are now going to be three steps: the accreditation process, which is what we're talking about, then the job check, which is done by the employer, and then the work visa. So really important to just distinguish that we're talking about the accreditation here and not the other two steps. The other two steps are not in policy yet. The finer details have not been disclosed by immigration yet. And so I'd prefer not to talk about that in too much detail today.
You know what, I think we're going to have to do another interview, Caren.
Yeah. But
there's enough to talk about now just to get accredited, isn't there?
Absolutely, for sure. But so we're talking about the accreditation at the moment, not the next two steps.
Right. Okay, thank you. Now, what should employers do if they haven't been accredited before?
Bridget, I don't think there's any difference really, other than I think they should get themselves educated in terms of what they have to do and what the requirements are, because possibly they haven't had to face this issue before. You know, somebody who was accredited in the past may find this a whole lot easier and just know exactly what is required. So if somebody hasn't been accredited before, I would certainly start by making themselves aware of the key dates that we're going to talk about, and what they need to do to get themselves accredited, and then what they're going to need to do to hire migrants.
And while we're just talking about this, can you just summarize for me again what people who are currently accredited need to do?
There is no connection between the two at all. So people that are accredited, they can't use the policy anymore, and B, the new accreditation application process is completely different, and they will need to apply just like everybody else again after the 23rd of May.
Right, so everybody's in the same boat.
Everybody's in the same boat. Yep.
Right, okay, good. So now we get on to the nitty-gritty of where people need to get their pens out and start noting down the details. What are the key dates employers should be aware of?
Okay, so really important. So the 23rd of May is when the accreditation application process opens. As I said before, no rush. You don't have to become accredited, but if you want to support a visa, you do. So you do need to become accredited before you can support a visa at all. So that's the very first step. So that's the 23rd of May. Then the very next month, on the 20th of May, applications open for job checks. So that's the second.
20th, sorry, just clarifying.
20th of June, sorry.
June, right, so 23rd of May is the accreditation.
Yep. The 20th of June, job check applications open. So that's the second step in this process. So that is where you apply to immigration to support a visa for X role in X location. Okay. And then the 4th of July is the very important date when all AEWV applications open. So as I said before, remember this is aligning with the border opening, and these visas will get processed for offshore and onshore candidates. So that's the date that all new work visa policies will start under this new accreditation. Bridget, another important point is that people have been asking is, as you know, visas are not being processed at the moment for people that are offshore. And so you're going to ask me, well, what if I employ somebody and they have a wife and some children? You know, can they come with this new visa applicant that's applying under the new policy on the 4th of July? Yes, they can. So after the 4th of July, if you include your partner and children, those visas will also get processed.
A related question to that, which a number of our clients have been asking about, is pathway to residence. Obviously, under the previous, the accredited talent visa, there was a pathway to residence, and that, you know, is a big draw card for a lot of particularly highly skilled and professional migrants. And now we're going to be asking people to come to New Zealand, you know, maybe on a 3 or 4 year contract, bring their families, sell everything in their home country, and then what? Do you have any insights on that?
I do. So, Bridget, this new policy is going to work all around the median wage. So the median wage just recently went up from $27 to $27, I think 76. Don't quote me off the top of my head. I believe it's $27.76 per hour, which, if you double that and you convert that to an annual salary, takes you to about 115 or 116,000 per annum. We understand that that is going to be the threshold to give the work visa holder a pathway to residence. We haven't seen that in policy yet, but this is what we understand they're going to do. I believe that the minister is still making decisions on that. But so what I'm saying to you, just to summarize, if you come in on an AEWV, the new policy, and you are earning twice the median being 27.76, so double that and calculate an annual salary, if you're earning more than twice the median, you will have a pathway to residence. It will be the same as what it was before. So you will be on a work visa for 2 years, and then only after 2 years, you can apply for residence. So it won't be available to you immediately. It will only be a pathway to residence after 2 years.
Great, I think that's going to be very good news. And assuming that will be announced before the policy is fully implemented on
Yes.
July. Great.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you, Caren. Now, is there anything else that you want to highlight at this point?
Yes, absolutely. Bridget, there is an amazing residence visa policy that is available to migrants called the new 2021 residence visa policy. It was a once-off policy that was announced in September last year and is a real amazing opportunity for people that are in New Zealand. If people have not heard about it, or if their staff have not heard about it, they really should be highlighting it to people, because it is only available until the 31st of July. So the 31st of July, that policy closes and will not be presented to people again. It really is a once-off, and it's a very easy way to get residence. So if employers have not spoken about it within their organizations, please just highlight it and just say to people, have you considered it? Because it might be the easiest way that they will ever have to apply for residence. And if they only realize in August, it's going to be too late. So yes, the new residence visa policy, guys, get yourselves across the requirements. It is so simple. It is literally to have been in New Zealand at the end of September 2021 is the requirement, and to be earning enough. So please, if anybody has any questions about that, reach out to me, because it would be real sad if people don't know about it and miss the opportunity.
Absolutely, and from an employer's point of view, also to be able to hold on to
Absolutely.
foreign to international talent.
That's the whole point of the policy, is to hold on to our skills. And so, people have had no security in terms of being able to stay here, A, and B, being able to travel back home with our borders being closed. And of course, getting residence takes all that insecurity away and allows people to travel freely. So yeah, if you haven't heard about it, please at least let your employees know about it. And if they need help, please reach out and we can help them.
Great. All right, well, I think we might wrap up, and I'm sure we'll be back with another interview about the other two parts of the process. But I'd like to thank you, Caren, for joining us today.
And thank you for having me.
My pleasure. If anyone wants to contact Caren to find out more about how she and KPMG can support you with accreditation, or in fact any visa matters, Caren is findable on LinkedIn, or we will also have her details when we publish this interview. Likewise, if you want to contact me about any of our resettlement programs or assistance with the resettlement requirements of the new AEWV program, again, I can be found on LinkedIn or via our website, www.mobile-relocation.com. So thank you, Caren, and we will be back.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bridget. As always, lovely to see you.